All right, those pitches were amazing, so a big good luck to all of the founders. I'm going to start with a story about my kids, because I have 4 of them. Ready for this? So 18, 15, 2 years old, and 4 months old. That's the kind of reaction I want every single time I say something, okay? No, and with all seriousness, I'm going to talk about something I'm very passionate about, and I want you guys to give me some feedback as we go along. So if you hear something that you like or that makes you think differently, I want you to say, yeah, all right? Try it with me. Yeah. All right, and if you're really excited, you can say, damn right, but it's Ramadan, so let's try to keep it like PG, okay? I'm here to talk about success. Why am I so obsessed about success? Because the world, in my opinion, has an unhealthy relationship with work. But work is just the tip of the iceberg. We need work. It gives us self-efficacy. It gives us a sense of pride. It's what sets up entire social structures. The more insidious issue is our belief and our ideas around success. I know this because I'm a recovering workaholic, but I also know this because I've worked with hundreds of thousands of people around the world and across different companies. And I know that overworking isn't working. Yes? Overworking's not working, right? And there has to be an alternative. There has to be another way. And for all the founders and all the C-suites and all the investors, the founder's mindset or the founder's mode and hustle culture is not the solution. But for us to find an alternative, to see that alternative, we first need to debunk some of these strongly held beliefs and ideas that we have about success. And the first one, in my opinion, is the most insidious. We've all heard this before. All you have to do is work hard, put your head down. It's grit, it's perseverance, it's consistency, it's discipline, right? Hard work is important. And there's going to be moments where you're going to have to rely on that grit and perseverance to make it through. But the fact or the idea that hard work alone equals success, I'm sorry to tell you folks, it's a lie. It is a full-out lie. And this is why I know it's a lie. Because if that was true, every nurse who's burnt out and working 12-hour shifts, every single teacher who's spending 50 hours a week into the classroom and spending the extra weekdays and time on the weekend grading papers, every single founder in this room, every single entrepreneur would be successful because they're all working extremely hard. But we know that that's not the case because success is so much more complex than just hard work alone. It's about intuition, it's about technology, it's about strategic foresight, it's about having access. You could take 2 people who work equally as hard, and because one has more access to capital or a better network or maybe a head start in other parts of their life is going to come out on top. And this is the other problem with this idea that hard work equals success. It leads people to burnout and to the diminishing rate of return. Once you've worked 55 hours in a week, you become less effective, less creative, more irritable, you're going to make mistakes, you're not going to be a good person to be around, right? And if you do that consistently over and over again, you're going to lead yourself to burnout. And we know that the risks of burnout are significant, not just on a myriad of mental health issues, but on our physical well-being as well. All right, myth number 2, productivity determines your self-worth. We live in a world where being busy is a badge of honor, with how much you produce is what creates your self-worth. Our entire identities are tangled up in this idea. And we know this is not true because your worth is inherent. Our worth is inherent. How do we know this? Well, let's look at a child, for example. We know that children don't need to produce to be valuable. We also know that once you leave the workforce and you retire, you don't all of a sudden lose your value. These ideas that our value is tied to our productivity and our output comes from 2 concepts, internalized capitalism and work enmeshment. Internalized capitalism is when we internalize this idea that we are only worthy when we're producing. It's what makes us feel bad for taking a break or saying that I can't step away from my work because there's too much going on, I have to be there. And work enmeshment is this idea that you are what you do. And this is something that many of us envision for ourselves, like we are what we do. Think about the first thing that you use to invite or introduce yourself to someone. It's what you do for a living. Think about the question that we ask every doe-eyed 7-year-old. We ask them, what do you want to be when you grow up? We don't say, what do you want to do for a living? How do you want to find financial freedom? We say, what do you want to be when you grow up? We ingrain this idea that you are what you do at a very young age. And society reinforces it because we put so much value on title and status and what's in your bank account and where you work, that dream job. And these are the things that we need to start to question. Anytime we reduce our identity to a singular role, whether it's that of our role at work or it's being a partner or it's being a parent, we reduce that inherent value that we all have. All right, myth number 3. Status, fame, and money will make us all happy. This is really easy to dispel because all we have to do is look at Hollywood or Washington, D.C. and know that that's not true. Yep, right? Yes. So, yes, we are at a fundraiser, I know. But whether or not you win the fundraiser or you get the title, that's not going to create the kind of success that's really going to give you true fulfillment. Because when you are chasing that one thing, you're going to get there, and then the goalpost is just going to move again. And the goalpost keeps moving and moving and moving. But I don't want to take you to Hollywood or Washington, D.C. to illustrate the story. I want to take you to Utah. And I want you to meet Corey and Mal. They're this adorable couple from Utah, and 2 years after they got married, they wanted to start their own company. They started a direct-to-consumer e-commerce business called Taft. Taft creates these beautiful shoes for men, and Taft shoes became the go-to shoe on some really popular feet. They became the preferred shoe off the court for NBA players. And in the first year, generated over $100 million in e-commerce sale. They got a lot of recognition. Oops, sorry. They got a lot of recognition. Something's wrong with the slide. But this was Corey 9 days after he accepted his award for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur Year of the Award. He was Forbes 30 Under 30, EY Entrepreneur of the Year, and 9 days after he accepted his award, he admitted himself into the hospital because of mental health concerns. And he told his story on LinkedIn, and I was really struck by it because he posted his picture accepting that award as the Forbes 30 Under 30 EY Entrepreneur of the Year. And 9 days later, he posted a picture of himself in the hospital. And what I think is remarkable about Corey's story as well is that he knows what it takes to be successful, but he also knows the sacrifices that you make along the way. He's now doing much better, and he's actually a consultant for mental health and well-being in the workplace. Myth number 4, the sacrifice is always worth it. I coach lots of C-suite executives. I spend time with founders. And as people move further and further along their career, inevitably they have this intervention moment. Something happens that causes them to pause and question the choices they were making all along the way. And every single one of them says the same thing. I wish I would have paid attention to what I was sacrificing along the way. I wish I would have paid attention to the decisions I was making. You're going to have to make sacrifices. That comes with the part of the process. But it's about paying attention to those sacrifices along the way. It's not doing things without knowing what you're giving up along the way. Those sacrifices that we make are often rooted in 2 concepts. One is a scarcity mindset, and the other one is time discounting. Scarcity mindset tells us that if we don't win the pitch competition today, there's not going to be the money we need down the line. Scarcity mindset tells us that if someone else wins, then I lose. It puts us in the sense of fear that if I miss out on this thing, then I'm not going to get to where I need to go. It's the opposite of having that growth mindset. And then time discounting, which is really an important concept for us all to understand. We are discounting our future selves for the present. These are the sacrifices that you make along the way, not necessarily recognizing what it's going to mean for you 5, 10, 15 years down the line. This is also the one I'm probably the most passionate about, pun intended, is the passion myth. We've all heard it. If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Lie. That is just not true, right? It's a lie. And actually, if I think about the pitches that were made today, most of them were healthcare related. And every single healthcare related pitch involved what? Burnout of healthcare workers. And the very first study on burnout was actually done on the healthcare sector. These are people who are deeply passionate about what they do. They're in the work of service. They're more likely to get burnt out. And that's the fact when it comes to when you're really passionate, you're more likely to get burnt out. But I want to illustrate the story with a story about Matthew Cooper. Matthew Cooper is a tech founder of a company called EarnUp. And Matthew had this remarkable agnostic ambition to democratize financial literacy. He wanted to give Americans the opportunity to pay down their debt, buy their first home, build generational wealth, all really powerful, passionate ambitions. And he was successful. He has developed a tremendous company. But he also struggled with a lot of challenges personally and with his mental health along the way. And he knew by becoming the CEO that would compound his challenges. But he did it anyways because he was so deeply committed. He actually recently wrote a Wall Street Journal article that said his work, because of his love for it, because of his passion for it, became a form of addiction. And now he's openly talking about it. He stepped away as CEO, took some time for himself, and then came back and is currently engaged in the company. But I think that's a really great example. And this is why, again, even if you're passionate about it, you're more likely to be at risk for burnout and more likely to be at risk for overwork. Because just because the work is meaningful, it doesn't mean it doesn't deplete us. So now I've told you, effort alone isn't the determinant of success, that just because your productivity is not tied to your self-worth, that money and status won't make you happy. I've told you that not all the sacrifices are worth it, and that just because you're passionate about it doesn't mean it isn't work. So what's the alternative? Like, how do we build sustainable businesses and also make sure that human potential and humans are thriving along the way? Well, I want to give you 5 options, 5 alternatives. I've taught you what to question, and I want to give you some options to consider. And the first one is embrace a multidimensional sense of self. This idea that we are what we do, or any one thing, is an idea that we need to change. We need to plant and harvest joy across the dimensions of our lives. We need to think about success across the dimensions of our lives. Social success, your relationships, your personal success, your professional success, your physical, mental, emotional success. Once we start to think about success across the domains of our lives and we harvest joy across those things, we become more resilient. We become less susceptible to when one area of our life doesn't actually go the way that we want. And that's also because true success is actually across these different domains. Number 2, think long-term. Thinking long-term is the kryptonite to time discounting. Think about something you're doing right now, or something that you're really passionate about, or you put a lot of energy in, or you think is going to be that thing that gets you to the next stage in your career or your profession. How much does that matter in 5 years? How much will it matter in 10 years? Really think about the time you're putting in, and think about what that means in further along the line. Really think about the long term. And what's the longest term study on human happiness and human fulfillment? It's the Harvard Adult Study of Development. This study actually gives us insight to what happens when we pursue success across the different aspects of our lives in pursuit of fulfillment and happiness. They took two groups of people, one from Harvard and one from an underserved community in Boston, and they've been following their lives for 85 years. They're looking at their spouses, their children, the psychology of their lives, every aspect of their lives. And they discovered one thing that determines their health and happiness in the long term. And do you want to know what that thing is? Relationships! Yes. The health of your relationships in your 50s will determine your health, your physical health, your emotional health, your financial health. It's the best indicator of holistic health and well-being in your 80s. So the thing that we compromise in our 20s, 30s, and 40s, the things that we sacrifice on the journey of professional achievement, on the journey of success, is the thing that sustains us in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And we don't know it while we're doing it. We don't realize it because no one warns us. That's what I'm here to tell you guys. No one warns us that work, or a relationship with work, or success, or a relationship with success can be harmful. And this is how it becomes harmful, when we don't realize what we're sacrificing along the way. Find a sustainable pace. You are going to have to hustle. This is not an anthem or a call to bed rot and doom scroll. Nothing's gonna come your way if that's what you're doing, okay? You're gonna have to hustle, you're gonna have to network, you're gonna have to work, you're gonna have to put in the effort, you're gonna have to, spend all-nighters sometimes and work all weekends if your investor is asking you for information. But you can't do that all the time. Mark Randolph, who's the first CEO of Netflix, was referenced earlier, and co-founder of Netflix, I think illustrates this example perfectly. If you think about the beginning of a triathlon, and this is not a staggered start triathlon, but all the swimmers jump in the water at the same time. Everyone's waving their arms, and you're getting elbowed in the face. I've never swam in a triathlon, but this is how he describes it. You're trying to survive. You have to swim really, really fast until you get to the open water. And when you get to the open water, you can find a more sustainable pace. And I love that analogy, because you are going to have to swim really hard at some points in your career. But you also have to make it to open water and find a sustainable pace. And that's really important, to know when to do that. I spoke to someone here in the room, Amna, earlier, who left the corporate world and started her own business. And I was reflecting on that story, and starting your own business is really hard, but she's working towards that open water. And I think it's really important to know that that's what you're doing. Number 4, this is also extremely important. Maintain an overview. We get so sucked in to our jobs because we consider our jobs the primary source of our identity, the primary source of our pride, the primary source of who we are. But if you can maintain an overview, it is extremely powerful. There's actually something called the overview effect. And this was initially studied in astronauts. When they go into space, astronauts are very nationalistic. They usually have some kind of background in serving their country, and they go out into space as representative of their nation. But what happens to them when they come back? They actually lose a degree of nationalism. They have a broader sense of humanity. They have a broader sense of what's important because they see the earth without lines or borders. They see humanity on a grander scale. And that's what I want you guys to think about when you think about success. I want you to see your lives from that overview, from a multidimensional lens of what's important, and build your success and your progress across those multidimensional parts of your life. So zoom out, practice this perspective shifting. It's a really powerful cognitive shift. Number 5. Now, the first 4 were mostly internal mindset shifts. They were internal ways of thinking about success and reimagining success. I haven't talked about organizations or corporations, but let me tell you, I'm an ex-COO and ex-CHRO at some of the largest brands in the world. Corporations are not off the hook because 67% of people say the most stressful part of their job is their workplace. And as I said earlier, the world has an unhealthy relationship with work, and the organizations and corporations of the world have a big part to play in that. We need to create organizations that nurture human sustainability and human potential, not just productivity. But we also need to bust the myth that there's an either-or option. Either go after productivity or humans can thrive. That's not true. Again, we know that that's not true from a lot of research and science. But if you could only do one thing, you're thinking, that sounds great, Nabeela, but I work in a toxic workplace where I'm expected to be available 24 hours a day. You're talking gibberish. If there's only one thing a corporation could do to make a difference, it would be to invest in their managers. Gallup did research recently, and managers have an oversized impact on an individual's ability to thrive and be successful to the degree of 70%. So if I told all of the organizations in here, I could help you be effective by 70%. I could improve your effectiveness by 70% if you only did one thing. Invest in your managers so they're great leaders. That is by far the biggest impact. Now, what makes us, what's the most likely indicator of our success? Relationships. What's the one thing that improves workplaces to the degree of 70%? Relationships, folks. We can't AI this. Sorry. There is no AI algorithm in this option. There is no AI underneath. Okay? This is about human relationships. So I want you guys to imagine a world where loneliness, the global epidemic of loneliness, is solved because we give more time and space to the relationships that matter. I want you to imagine a world where your sense of fulfillment and success comes from planting seeds of joy across the domain of your life. I want you to imagine a world where you're not putting your self-worth in a title or in winning a pitch competition or in anything that you set, any one thing that you set your sights on. I want you to imagine a world where your worth is inherent. This is the kind of world where I want to work in and live in, and I want to invite you to all be part of it. So thank you very much.